Well, welcome everybody. This is the second opportunity that we're going to try the Academy of Animated Art Ask Me Anything Roundtable. So thank you all very much for participating. And like I said, there should be people trickling in throughout the night. But I kind of wanted to get started in talking about the images. So the challenge for tonight was to come with a virtual background with an image that inspires you. And so I just kind of want to hear why you guys selected yours. Now, prior to starting here, Sam mentioned that yours was from Click. So I want to hear, and you said you had like kind of a unique reason why you chose this particular image. So tell me about it.
Yeah, so I wasn't really sure if it was meant to be like aesthetically inspiring or sort of just generally inspiring film. But I went with the latter, kind of just like the film that inspires me. So yeah, this is Click. For those you don't know, it's kind of like one of Adam Sandler's more serious films. Although in the fat suit, it doesn't really seem like it, but it is more of a serious film. And essentially it's a guy who's a middle-aged guy who's in like a bit of a midlife rut, and he gets a magic remote which he can use to fast forward through his menial tasks. And I won't really go into any more detail in case anyone hasn't seen it and wants to watch it, but basically I feel like it has a really good meaning, especially in a time like this, which I think it's, all those things seem boring and everything's stopped and people might be getting like a bit agitated. I think it's important just to appreciate like what's around you and just find happiness and laughter just in the smallest things, which I think the film is really good in doing. And the reason why I chose this specific shot is kind of killing two birds with one stone, is because it has Sean Astin in it, who is in another film that I find very inspiring, Rudy, which is kind of more of an obvious inspiring thing, like never giving up, no matter how many times you fail or how many obstacles are in front of you. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's a great one. Sean Astin has like one of my favorite movie careers out of anybody, like between like Goonies and Lord of the Rings and Rudy. Like he's a fun one. Yeah. His role on Stranger Things was amazing.
I didn't actually realize how many like old things he's in quite a lot of Adam Sandler's films if you look for him. But when I first watched them, I had no idea until I specifically looked and noticed.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. All right, now I want to jump to Holly. Holly, you've got a lovely background there. Why don't you tell us about it?
It's actually Kung Fu Panda 2. This film, I've studied it so many times, watched it so many times. It's amazing to see, like first off, the message, like, never give up, like, knowing, like, you define yourself and stuff. Love that message. But also just, like, there's, like, one part where, like, when Shen's introduction, like, there's literally, like, red shadows, and, like, there's, like, if you look at the lighting in that, it's very angular and stuff. So it's just a very gorgeous movie, and I love seeing the dynamic lighting in that one. So
that's great. It's beautiful atmospheric back there too, like back behind the house, the structure there, like the deep far back, like that just kind of blue silhouette of the hills out. It's really nice. All right, Nicholas, see what you got going on back there. It's is that like a projection? Yes, I know you got to kind of do this move before. Yeah,
it's actually a photograph from from a photographer. Oh my God, I can't talk. From Abelardo Morel, and it's actually a camera obscura that he's built in a room. So it's a room scale camera obscura, and he's got a ton of them. And it's important to me because this image and that photographer specifically was really important to me when I was a young adult, when I decided to become a professional artist. And I was looking at a lot at that time, and what he was doing technically and like aesthetically with the camera and just like playing with light and light phenomenon and optics was just really inspiring to me at the time. And it really formed who I am a lot as an artist and kind of how I choose to pursue certain challenges and things like that. And it's just really important image to me. I've tried to recreate a lot of his images. I've actually made one of these room scale camera obscuras, and you just learn a lot by seeing, like, all of a sudden 20 minutes later your eyes have adjusted and you can see, outside projected on the wall and moving in color. So it's really interesting images and I really like them.
That's incredible. Yeah, I love camera obscura rooms. I love so I got into this by learning traditional photography methods, And there's so much about traditional photography that's just magical. Like it's nothing short of magical. The fact that you can make a room that's light tight with one like little pin-sized hole in one room, and it actually projects everything outside. And then when you're processing your print, and you put your it's just like you take a piece of paper, you just shine light on it, and then you stick it in this magic liquid, and then all of a sudden like a photograph comes like fades up out of nothing, and it's such a magical process. It's so cool.
That probably was like my first moment of rendering, right? Was that moment when you see an image kind of come out of, you think you've done it correctly, and then it comes through. Here's like just really quickly another one from him. That was another, I think this was probably the first one I saw that I was like,
it's good maneuvering.
So it's a cardboard box, that's all it is, with a little, looks like a projector aperture in it. And for so long I looked at this image, like, how did he balance, a full light bulb and still be able to see inside the box as well, and all of this. So it was really important to me, again, because it's very technical, but I think just what he was doing, what he was speaking to, like talking about all this was light. So I thought that was really interesting. So those two were really important to me when I was.
That's really cool. No, that's incredible. I still, I'm not that I've been in the office for a while, but I still have an old pinhole camera that I built just like next to, I haven't used it in a very long time, and I don't plan on it, but it's just like a little reminder of me of that we're still just like creating images from hand. Like, I know we have fancy computers and fancy render engines and stuff, but we're still making handcrafted images in a way. And so it just kind of helps remind me of that. So that's really cool.
And maybe the image seems simple now to make with, Photoshop or compositing, but he did this on film. So it's just like,
yeah,
you can't really see it while you're doing it.
Well, that's the other thing that drives me nuts about Photoshop, even to this day, is that those processes, like the filters that you do, like you can just like click on something and it's sepia toned, versus like when you had to do in photography, like you had to physically like put your hands in weird chemicals that will probably kill you someday in order to get in order to strip the like everything off and like get the browning on it or whatever. Or like you would have to in order to get a vignette, you'd have to construct like a piece of paper on a piece of wire, and then you'd have to like hover it over the image so that the outer side got like exposed a little bit more, and then that got darker. It was there were different ways that you could do that, but it was, and then you had to like move it up and down so that you didn't see the hard edge of the shape. It was just like faded in.
And then you have one print, and then you gotta do it again.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and that was, and they always show black and white processing labs that had the red light. But when you're working with color, you can't have red light because that'll contaminate it. So you're just in pitch black darkness. So you're just stumbling around a dark room, running into each other if it's a group lab, which was fun. But yeah, so that's incredible stuff. Clever, you've got some Lion King going on. Why don't you tell us about it? There you go.
There are so many movies that I like from the past, but one that I remember thinking everyone enjoy. It's like a epic movie for numbers, for story, for animation was The Lion King. It's emotional, it's a story, and I watched the last one like using the live action, but I don't know why I enjoy it. It's the same story, but on that time it was more magical, the 2D version. So
yeah,
very good.
Don't let anyone. Ari Ross, who is in the lighting student page, he worked on the more recent one. Don't ever say it was live action around him. He was like, no, I had to light those characters. There's nothing live action. They were both animated. He's a sweet guy, but he laughs at that. Tyler or Trent, sorry, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm actually streaming in through my phone today, so I couldn't quite get a camera. But I've got a lovely backdrop of a white wall.
We can actually see you today. You're not in the dark.
Exactly.
So that's great.
Yeah.
We're talking about inspiration. Do you have any films or any images or any artists that you've worked with in the past that really got you?
I was trying to throw in the backgrounds and stuff from Guardians of Gold because I mentioned it last time, just in case people hadn't seen it. So that's why they came up with a backdrop of the profile pic. But it's a little fiddly, and I didn't want to be that person, especially live, streaming down my phone, trying to like touch things up and stuff. So there's a shot in that anyway, which is on my profile pic in here, that where the main character is flying through all the rain droplets, and he does like a barrel roll throughout lightning and spirals and stuff like that. Which was really, really crazy. That shot is just, I think back in the day for its time where that movie was up to with all the like technology and stuff, it was really inspirational, super inspirational.
That's great. That's really great. Tyler, you popped on. Is that Hugo?
It is Hugo, yeah.
Why don't you tell us about it?
Well, so I was actually having a really hard time trying to like come up with something that, I mean, there's obviously a lot that inspires me, but I was trying to think back of like, you know, when was something that I really started to notice, more computerized, more like, stylized lighting in film. And I really thought that Hugo was a really pivotal moment for me, thinking about, how just how they portray it, how they incorporate it. And I thought it was just it was a really, really beautiful film, especially for its time. And I also really enjoyed, the cinematic history that they built into it.
It's a great segue into George Méliès, who's like, a lot of what we do couldn't even be possible without.
Yeah, for sure. I think, if you guys get a chance, I mentioned George Méliès in the compositing class because, he was like a magician turned cinematographer early in the 19th century or 20th century. And his work is incredible. And I think like he's one where most of what he created is lost to history. Is so much like, they don't really talk about this, but so much of like early film just doesn't exist anymore. Like it existed as one print on one set of film. And then if like and they were totally flammable too. Like there was a real problem with film catching on fire in the early days. And so they just lost so much of it. And there's like, like rumors of his great films that did this or did that, but they just don't really
one will pop up where it's like a long lost video.
Yeah, it'll pop up in someone's attic or at some estate sale or something. So yeah. And I think like Hugo is one of those movies I haven't seen in a long time, but it's one of those that it's you forget how good it is. Like that, and like Arrival I just rewatched recently, which was such a good movie. Yeah. I put in a Parasite. Actually, this image, I don't know, it's hard to see, but the guy, oh man, I'm really bad at pointing. Right here, as it's like, there's like one shot in Parasite of the guy coming up from the stairs, and it's from the kid's perspective, and it was like the thing that caused the kid to like have all of these emotional issues and everything. And it was just like the timing of when I saw this movie. It was right during crunch on the last film that I was working on. And sometimes when you get in a big project like that, you kind of get lost in the weeds and you get buried by like working a lot and focusing in, and you kind of lose sight of what you're working on. And I came home and I just like, I have a brother who buys a bunch of movies on iTunes. And so I just am tapped into his iTunes account. So it's like always magical. And I was like, hey, look what he bought today. And it was Parasite. And so I watched it. And this shot in particular, like, was so impactful for me that it was like, we've got the warm light around the sides, and just like it's usually the opposite when you're lighting characters, like warm light on the character and cool light on the surroundings, but they inverted it, made him like look super creepy and bugged out his eyes. And like, this shot like burrowed into my brain, and I thought about it more than really any other shot that I've seen in a really long time. And so and actually this film too, and it was like, it was really cool after it was done, because it was just like, it was really motivational for me to be like, oh, like to get back into making stuff myself and be excited about the project that I was working on, because you're a part of this thing, you're telling stories, it's really cool. So I was really very much into that. So but yeah, do you guys like, I kind of want to talk about like the inspiration. Do you guys because this is something that comes up a lot, because I talk about it in the classes, like, oh, make sure you find reference. I always ask people to post their reference, but like, do you guys find it difficult to find reference imagery when you're trying to build something, even though like I know we have Google, and I know that there's like Getty Images and all these great resources, but do you guys find it easy? Do you know what you're trying to do, or is it a struggle for you to find reference images? I'll start with, I'll just call people out. I'll just call on people. We'll go Holly.
I like if I'm going for like a specific mood and stuff and like a specific like situation, yeah, sometimes it's incredibly hard to find like specific images that cater to what you're looking for. So
do you ever like take mental note now when you're watching something, or like if you're out in the world and you're like, you take a mental note of something as being, could be referenced down the road if you're ever trying to create something?
yes, I do, and I take pictures of textures all over the place because you never know when it comes in handy. So
What was the most recent one that you've done that you can remember?
I actually took a picture of a blade of grass and stuff because I was working like on one of that lighting challenges for it, so it was like a nighttime thing, so it's like close up of glass. So not exactly the most exciting thing.
All right, Clever, how about you? What do you got?
I used to find difficult, but I found that Google and ArtStation are not good as Pinterest. Pinterest, it's amazing. You start searching something and then you start to find similar ones better than any another platform. And the last one I took was from my TV, the Chromecast. The Chromecast, sometimes they live there and starting showing up images. And
like the screensaver images on the Chromecast?
Yes, I don't know where it comes from that image. They don't set the names. Then when I like it, few cities that I was setting up the city, let's take a picture, because after a few seconds just vanish the image. And
that's an amazing one. Yeah, I guess that's a great question. Like, what's the strangest, like, are there any like strange sources of inspiration that get you? Like any, like a screensaver is really great. For me, when I was younger, there was something about, this was one that I just did when I was designing something else. So I was trying to explain, so like it's similar to like the process of, it was basically, I was trying to explain the idea of taking an old workflow where we used to do something linearly, where like one person worked on it, then another person, then another person. And we were developing a workflow where people could work on it concurrently. So it was like working on a Google Doc versus a Word document, where, a Word document you'd have to save and then email it to somebody who'd work on it and save it, like versus a Google Doc where everyone can hop in. But it's really hard to explain that in graphical visuals without like explaining the way that something works. So I was actually looking at my my Apple Watch, and I don't know if you guys, like, it has these rings on it, and it's like their big marketing campaign now is to close your rings. And I found it like very satisfying to like when the ring got closed. So so what I actually did with this graphic was design like concentric rings going around and like showing how everybody was developing kind of at the same time and trying to get all the rings to close at the same time. But that was my weird moment of just like looking at my watch and being like, oh, that's kind of a cool design for that, and stealing from Apple.
But for the screensavers that come from the Chromecast, because it's from my network, it's connected. It's images that come from, I don't know where it comes from. It's probably Google selects that images. You just cast to the Chromecast.
Well, that's the way, like Apple TV does the same thing, and they've started doing like these satellite ones that are like they're moving, and it's like NASA footage of just above the atmosphere, so you can kind of start to see like the outlines of it drives me crazy that they won't tell me where they are. But I think somebody found like a hotkey or something on your Apple remote that'll show it. But but those are great. I can like. I stare at my screensavers all the time. What else you guys got? Anybody have any strange sources of reference or inspiration? All right. Go ahead. Go ahead, Nicholas.
So this is not necessarily related to lighting, but I do this all the time. It drives my girlfriend crazy. So a couple months, like we'll be out at a place, and so what I do now is design is I'm a designer. It's like experience design. So things on the wall, it's hard to explain. Anyways, there was this kind of graphic that was on the wall and its construction. I was like, how did they do that? So I'm over there like kind of pulling apart this thing off this wall to figure out how they did it. And my girlfriend's just always so annoyed and embarrassed because I'm always like in there taking pictures of it. So it's just kind of seeing how other people do things as well is interesting, and not just to copy them, but to kind of understand how, you know, how other people are tackling the same problems that you are.
Mm-hmm.
Have different perspectives on it, because I have a specific way of doing what they did and theirs was different and it looked better. So I was kind of curious. So things like that were interesting, and just always kind of being out in public and stopping and like pointing something out. It doesn't annoy her, but she just makes fun of me for it a little bit.
That's great. Yeah, you have to have a patient significant other if you're going to be doing this stuff, because you'll do that all the time. The one that always gets me too is when I've already worked on something and then like I can't get it out of my head. Like I was working on buildings and I was trying to get their like a skyscraper's windows to look right during the daytime. And like I was just like, I kept working at it and looking at reference, and I was like, I know this is wrong, but I can't figure out what it is. And now this was like 2 years ago now. And now every time I walk around, I'm like, oh, it's because, oh, it's reflecting that. Oh, I get it. And it's like, I gotta let it go. But that's the kind of stuff that gets me, is like, it sucks, but it's like after you do it, you realize what you start seeing some stuff.
I had a very similar windows like that, where it's some of those glazing like have reflections off the front and they have reflections off the back. So it's like a double reflection in the glass. I'm pointing that out and she's like, I don't care. I was like, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, that's also a valid concern. Let me ask you guys something. So kind of off topic a little bit, but I know that like Unreal just released, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but they just released a new demo recently that was like insane. How interested so like I've never really been that interested in real-time lighting up until like a year or two ago. And now I'm kind of like curious about it. Like how interested are you guys in that? Would that be something you guys would want to learn more about at this point? What you guys hop in? Let's see. Sam, what do you got? Have you done anything?
I mean, I'm learning Maya for the first time like this week. So at this point in time, I'm interested in anything. So I feel like I don't really have enough experience to say to really distinguish between it yet. But
that's right. Talk to us. Like, how did you get in? Like, how did you first get into Maya? Like, how did you get into doing this in the beginning?
Well, I do a degree in film and TV production, but I realized I kind of don't really enjoy the logistics of live action that much. I want to transition into VFX animation. So this lockdown period, I've kind of been trying a whole bunch of new things. I learned to draw, which I realized I do not enjoy and I'm terrible at. I've done a bit of coding. I've done a bit of everything really. And then I came to VFX, and specifically lighting for VFX, which kind of led me to this course. And now I'm doing it. I'm kind of open to feature animation and lots of things as well. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. But that's basically how I got there. And before that, I've done like one tutorial of Maya, basically punching in numbers of like a modeling tutorial. And I think when I was 13, I was messing around with the torrented version of Cinema 4D, again, just punching in numbers. But now I'm kind of like trying to really get into it properly and learn, not just to copy tutorials, but actually learn how to use the software.
That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of, film right now is tough. And even on the best days, film is really, really difficult. It's, you never think it will be, but like the ones that I've been a part of, just the simplest shots take all day. And the one story that I have from a friend, a guy who was one of my professors when I was in school, who worked on a ton of films, like a bunch of really cool VFX projects. And I asked him one time, like, what shots he's most proud of. And he talked about the movie As Good As It Gets, like the Jack Nicholson, Helen Hunt, a romantic comedy from like 1997. And I was like, why? And he said they set up a shot in New York where they like closed down streets and they got all these permits and they shot it. And it was on film, and the film got damaged. And they couldn't like they didn't have the ability to go back and reshoot it. So they hired the company that he was working for to just like touch up all the film and like go through frame by frame and like repaint everything in. And he's like, when you watch the movie, you absolutely cannot tell, and we don't even get credit for it because the producers of the film didn't want like all this big VFX thing and he's like, but that I'm the most proud of in my career. And I was like, and that's when I realized like, man, film sucks. If you can't even go back and reshoot for bad film, like I don't know, man. That's
Yeah.
that's not great.
I mean, the reason why I do not like it is just the days like raining, you've got to be out there for hours on your feet and you're just hungry and you just want to go home.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone insists on shooting the same shot over and over again. It's just, I'm looking forward to having something like more stable and just like in a nice warm office.
Yeah, that was one of my main motivations for getting into this too, because I didn't want to do photography anymore. Having to work weird hours. The other people that I feel really bad for on film sets, so they're always shooting Law and Order around New York. Like everywhere, you always run into a Law and Order set, and there's like they always have like some poor intern on the sidewalk trying to stop walking traffic from going through. And everybody knows that they have no like actual authority. Like they can't stop you from going anywhere. So they're always like, hey, and they always like are yelling at you to stop. And you're like, no, I'm just going to, like, they're not actually shooting now. I'm just going to walk right through. They did that. I got into the background of, I didn't make the final cut, unfortunately, but the back of Doctor Strange when they were shooting. I was really in a hurry and I needed to get through and I kind of stuck past them. And they made me sign a waiver. I was like, man, this took longer than if I would have just waited. But I did not make the final cut of Doctor Strange. I really, really watched myself.
Oh, that's another thing. All the paperwork.
The guys are shooting and you crossing behind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they painted me out for more of his cape. I'm sorry, what were you saying, Sam? It's funny, like the one thing about Doctor Strange, sorry, not to go on another tangent. Do you guys know that his cape is all CG in all of his films? It's nuts. It's like I found that one out recently, and like you watch it now, it's just like always just kind of, because they always want it like moving and flowing, but they don't want to just blow wind all the time. It's like, man, the decisions that they make to do all CG, it's crazy. I mean, it's what keeps us employed, and it's gonna be great, but it's nuts.
I always think characters like that are super interesting. Bringing something that otherwise is a totally inanimate object.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the sack of flour kind of animation test, I guess. Can you make it seem happy or sad or something like that? So I always find that super interesting, and to watch how people do that.
Yeah, we did a test on the film Epic years ago, where we were testing like the process of, because one of the major, if you're running into problems on an animated film and you're like running out of time and running out of budget, the one thing that you can do is stop moving the camera and lock it off, so you can just render a one frame of the background and just have the characters animated on top of it, of like the still frame. And we were running up against it in that movie, and we were like, and we'd had animated trees throughout, and we're like, we wonder if we can get away with this one sequence without it. And then they did a test on it, and it was like once you have motion back there, and once you feel like the thing, like you definitely don't notice it for the other sequences, but the second you take it away, it's like something just felt very, very off about it, and we just couldn't get away with that anymore. So like that like, yeah, like that ambient breathing of something that you don't think of as being an animated object is it makes a big difference, and you definitely notice it if it's not there. But yeah, I want to go back to the Unreal thing, or the real timeline. Has anyone looked into it? Anyone playing around with it now?
I've used V-Ray RT a little bit, and mostly where I used that was not character lighting, but it's actually super fast for product lighting, because you can just place the reflections super fast and you get them kind of locked in, and final render is going to be, production, for me at least, production V-Ray, but that's something I used a little bit. I played with it, but then I kind of got out of that business, so I haven't really touched it since then. Yeah. But it was very fast to be able to just get those reflections where you want, because that's vital for product viz.
That's great. Kleber, you were using it, right?
Yes.
How have you found it?
I think because we are so used to the traditional rendering, when you get in Unreal, it's a little bit strange because you're so used to, okay, let's light and press and wait. And it's a little bit take time for you. Let's start feeling this. Let's start lighting this. And you, until you get the trick to, okay, let's turn off all the lights. Let's turn off let's feel how the lights are happening in this real-time environment. How the HDRI work, okay? Turn on, turn off.
Mm-hmm.
And you start experimenting and see how it really works. And the pitfalls, what's the problems that's happening, like anti-alias, when you see the borders. Okay, but what's wrong with the anti-alias? How can I increase the anti-alias for a real time? And I found that sometimes things that are black and white or crossing, like a normal renders, a lot of contrast, you can see some problems.
Mm-hmm.
Fur is still not great. I'm testing fur. I was testing to place in the challenge the fur,
Mm-hmm.
but I thought, oh, okay, it would take too much time and just for now without fur. But I tested,
Mm-hmm.
and I think because our mind think, okay, it's Unreal, it look like a game. We have that mindset. It's a game. But you see some images on the internet, a lot of people are pushing the boundaries of the real-time quality and see how they can get on that level.
Mm-hmm.
Because they master, and then develop it and found how the tool really works. If you just initially start working, it looks like a game until you learn how really work behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time, but after, I'm not a master, of course, I'm still learning, but I think if we master that Unreal or another real-time environment, I have the feeling it's the future. And as I said, initially I found it looked like a game, but after I started find where the things are, how the things work, how the anti-alias work. And then I started, okay, let's lock just one camera. It's not 360 degrees. Then I found a feeling for light and appreciate more of just that feeling, oh, it's just a game. It's different. And you can see displacement in real time.
Mm-hmm.
You can see a lot of things in real time. And as I said in the Facebook, the new technology will push even further. I think it will be I'm not sure if the other engines are how they're gonna work if it works more than we expect.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how if we do, like, because they're already doing it on a smaller scale, but like the idea of doing VR storytelling, where you do a whole like immersive, it's basically like being in the movie and I know that the way that they're doing it now is they're kind of like pushing you through the space a little bit, like you don't have full control over anything. But I've thought about what it would mean to, like, from a lighter standpoint, from a visual aesthetic standpoint, to be in the space with the characters and kind of free to look around and look wherever you want. Because again, I always think about everything I create as being in the box, and like, how do I get people to look around this box and look at the things that I need them to? But if they're free to go in 360, like, how do I get them? Like, how do you manipulate the light? How do you manipulate the image to like get people to look at where you want them to look?
In 2018, I went to SIGGRAPH in Vancouver, and I watched a few VRs. It's the Bum 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 is the VR stuff. And I watched one from Disney. I'm not sure if it was from Disney. I don't remember. And the way they tell the story with VR, it's like you have to, I'm going to find that video and I will send for you watch it. it's very intuitive. You can look around, but the storytelling direct your eyes. The guy, the lights turns on that point, and then the guy goes running, and you keep watching that. You could look around, but the story try keep you max as they can where they want to focus your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I did ask that question to a director of photography at Pixar, and she talked about this specifically real time, or kind of VR environment. She said they spend so much time crafting the compositions for a single image and directing the viewer's eyes to exactly what they want to see, that it would be a huge challenge in VR.
Yeah, we were talking to one of my good friends who's no longer at Blue Sky, but he was the head of our stereoscopic department. And he was experimenting with VR, and we were having issues too. It wasn't issues, it was just interesting with, we were testing Ferdinand, and it changes him entirely when he's like a 7-foot or 8-foot tall bull versus, like you can kind of frame him in a certain way, but if you're always like looking up at him, it changes the way that you feel about the character and the way that you like read the character. And then I saw a test too where we did an Ice Age thing, and Sid the Sloth, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ice Age, but I had no idea that dude is like 6 feet tall. And I was like, wait, no, isn't he like, I thought he was like 3 feet tall. And they're like, no, he's tall, he's like a tall person. And I was like, no. And they showed, and I had to like look up reference, and I was like, no way. And I remember I had to do like a McDonald's spot. I had to light a McDonald's spot with him. And he was like holding a Happy Meal box, and the box was really little. And I was like, I don't like any of this. Like he feels like it should be much smaller. But that's like another thing, is like the scale of the characters, and how you're, as an audience member, like how do you perceive them in that space is really, really interesting.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, go ahead.
Just real quick, I'll be fast about it. We at my work, we do use something called Inkscape, which is basically a game engine for architects. And it's countless times we'll have a client that say, I want this thing to be, this display to be 9 feet tall. And we're just kind of thinking, do you know how tall 9 feet is? And then we'll put it in VR and we'll show them, and they realize like, oh, maybe it could be 6. It's okay. Like it's the scale of that when you see something on your screen, 6 inches tall, but then going into the real world, it's 9 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty drastic. So really, it's a helpful tool in that sense.
Yeah, and even I've done interior design work for people in the past. I always say that too when they're like, oh, I want to paint this big wall like a very bold color, because they looked at the color swatch and they're like, yeah, because I want this one, but like all of it. I was like, are you? And I do. I take like a photo of the room and then I mock it up for them, and they're like, oh no. Like, yeah, we'll add that color in very small places. But Tyler, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to voice my support too. I think it would be really interesting to learn more about this, because like it feels like the difference between lighting for a film versus lighting for like architainment, like a amusement park or something. It'd just be really interesting to see how it works and think about lighting an environment that people are free to explore how they will, as opposed to just giving them a frame to look at. So I think it could be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've never ever done before, and I would really love to just play with that aesthetic a little bit, like because it would be a challenge, because I'm not quite sure. And I think there's a lot, and I'm not saying that like, oh, I haven't done it before and somebody else has like a master's degree in this, like it just doesn't exist yet. Like nobody's really done it to a really successful level yet. So it'd be a lot of fun to play around with. So I just thought like if I got into that, like, would that be something you guys want me to share with you? So I just wanted to make sure. I want to share things that I'm doing without boring you guys with anything that's like, yeah, we don't really care about it. Okay. So I had something else that I was thinking of. What was it? Oh, now I forget. I completely lost it. That's not great. But I did want to talk about with like having, after taking these courses and like paying attention to stuff, like, are you guys much more aware of lighting when you watch a film or when you watch people ask me this all the time, and I always say no, but like, has it ruined the experience for you guys? Like, are you still able to detach from it a little bit to just watch and enjoy a project? Holly's shaking her head no. Nothing?
No, it's gotten to the point where I can't watch a film without like noticing something about it, and it's actually kind of ruined the experience for other people watching with me. So
My wife hates me when I do that. Oh, did you
Yeah.
see that? No, stop pausing the show.
Yeah, exactly. I did that when I had the old Aladdin on, because again, I was just trying to have a meeting today with my son, and I was like, "Here, watch the screen," and I just pulled up to Disney Plus, and Aladdin was there, so I just played it. And there was and he was looking at me like I was crazy because there was a vast landscape shot, and there was like some weird depth of field artifact, and I like paused it, and I was looking at it, and it was just a glitch in the stream, but yeah, that got me. And
Aladdin in
okay.
general was a tough movie because you had a real actor and you're constantly switching between a real actor and then a digi-double or a CG real actor.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I found that it just didn't work. The genie didn't work as well as the actual animation version of it, because you constantly are checking and your brain's going, hang on, that doesn't look quite right. Hang on, that doesn't look quite right. Some parts looked absolutely amazing. And sometimes the genie looked really great, but there were more the scenes when it was just the genie, like inside where he does that first dance when he first introduces himself. But whenever it was like constantly going back and forth between him and the real version of him, it's like it breaks immersion, and like the movie just kind of goes, and it was a bit jarring for me at times. But that's one that I really like, the animation versus the actual live action side of things for.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's totally true, because like when you're breaking in and out of that yeah, it's like you almost just want them to be the actor the whole time, and like just even if he can't do all the craziness. Like my favorite part about the newer Aladdin was like the dancing of the actual dancing that the characters did. I was like, it's not CG. I'm good with that.
Like if you switch to Dumbo, the reenactment of the balloon, not the balloons, the bubbles scene with the elephants, that was fantastic. But again, that's CG related. It's not really like live sort of real stuff. But that version was beautiful. I really like Dumbo.
That's great. Jasmine Katatikarn, welcome. Congratulations. You got the kids to bed?
One of them is in bed. Well, one of them's sleeping. The other one's still. Anyway.
That's 50%. That's not bad.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a tantrum, but anyway.
That happens. So we
were talking.
Hi. So we were talking about. I stole your idea a while back of a Zoom session where we have background images of artwork that inspires us, or just like film. It could be anything at all. What's like? Do you have anything? You don't have to like show it or anything, but like, do you have any films, any artwork? Anything that, not to totally put you on the spot.
I know. I was like, wait, maybe I should have come on.
You're like, no, you don't have to. You don't have to answer this.
What's the question? If there's anything that inspires me?
You've probably been in the quarantine. You've probably been watching movies with the kids, right?
Yeah. I mean, my kids are 4 years old and 2 years old. So movies is like Frozen 2. It's like Frozen 2 about 20 times, if that's like...
Is there anything about anything that you've seen during the quarantine that like impressed you, like that you saw and you're like, oh, that was really cool?
Interesting. I've actually, I mean, to be honest with you, crazy enough, I haven't really been watching TV because in the quarantine, you would think I'd have a lot of time, but I actually feel like I have even less time because I am home trying to work full-time remotely, plus having 2 kids at home that are 4 and 2 years old that are not in school. It's very difficult to get that much done during the day. So I find myself in the evenings hunkering down and like actually not watching TV and just doing work, honestly. So I know that's really lame, but like even you saying that, like, what good movies have you watched during the quarantine? I'm just like, honestly, I haven't had the luxury. I felt like I had more free time to watch TV and movies before the quarantine, when I had, full time at work during the day, and then I could, So to answer your question, Not really. I know my husband has been watching The Secretary, which I've gone into, and I've like gotten little snippets. It's not a movie, but it seems entertaining. I have no good answers. I apologize.
That's actually a really good segue into another topic. Like,
yeah.
So how are you all finding it? Because Jasmine and I have talked about the stresses of working in this like always at home environment. Are you enjoying it? For those that like are staying at home and not going to the office like they usually do, are you enjoying it more, or like how is it different than your expectation going into it? Nicholas, I saw you making head nods and such.
Like I haven't seen any of my friends at work in real life for 3 months or 2 months or whatever. So it's been awesome in some ways where, my lunch break is I can go sit outside and it's awesome. And I'm at home and my girlfriend's been here, so we got to see each other a lot more, which is actually really nice. Because we're just gone, 12 hours a day, and we're here at night and we see each other. So that's been great, but it's been more difficult to work, and I don't have kids at home I have to deal with either. And it's hard to. A lot of my work is in the physical space as well, so it's what does this really look like? I saw a picture of it, but usually I'm so used to picking it up or walking around it and seeing a physical thing. So that's been a lot more difficult, and just in general communication is hard, even with all the technology we have. It's harder to get everyone on the same page. But generally, I think we've adapted well, and it's not any harder in any overall. It's just different challenges.
And Trent, and to go back on what we were talking about last week a little bit, you've had such a unique experience where you just moved into
craving to go back to the office, because I've been technically unemployed for 6 months, right? But being at home, it's so different. I don't know, part of it goes down to, and it's hard for people who don't have access to a render farm, and once you've been spoiled with a proper pipeline, it's really hard to not work with it. Even at home, just doing stuff, I've only got one computer screen. I'm like, damn it, I need my second screen, because I'm constantly moving around windows, and there's little creature comforts that I definitely miss from being back in the office. And then obviously you've got so many more people around, and you feel so much more alone when you're in your little dungeon trying to do stuff, which is probably good at times when you're trying to get stuff. But yeah, from having the experience of working in the industry, listening to random conversations going on around you and jokes about stuff, or even talking about topical stuff with lighting and things, kind of helps you still stay on task as well. Or you can glance over to the person next to you and go, oh, maybe I can use that sort of on what I'm doing now, or maybe it's sort of refresher. Or you can just get up, go to the coffee, speak to someone, have a epiphany moment, and go, oh, that's what I should be doing, and go back. Whereas right now I got to go outside, talk to the dog for a little bit, and it's we're not really on the same page. So.
No, that's a really good point. That kind of spontaneous collaboration, or those aha moments that happen at unexpected times, because all of my interactions right now are calculated, right? They're all planned, they're all meeting based or whatever. But having that inspired moment it just doesn't happen fluidly, right? You're leaving it up to your dog to inspire you in a way.
I also find you're more likely to stay longer in front of your computer at home, and maybe potentially work later than you should, and you don't even realize what the time is, and the time goes by and you're like, oh wow, is it 2 o'clock now or something, or it's 3 o'clock? It's I need to actually go get some sleep, even though I don't have to be anywhere, I don't have to be presentable tomorrow. But it's you're trying to keep track of those sort of things can be quite management sort of.
On the flip side, those sweatpants, I'll just say that.
Yeah, I'm on a pair of pants that aren't elastic waist in months.
I'm in shorts and thongs right now.
Yeah, that's great. Perfect. Yes, that's perfect. I only put on collared shirts for these meetings, and then I just go back to a t-shirt. I need a break out of the habit. Do you find, because for me, the blend between the work week and the weekend, it all just kind of is one thing now, because it's not that much different. Are you guys, this is something that came up, are you doing anything are you keeping a routine during the day? Every morning, do you get up and have the same morning routine, or do you segment your day, or what are you guys doing to kind of break up your day a little bit, or to kind of make it so not everything is happening? Or I guess my question is, are you doing routines during the day, or are you just kind of letting the day run as it may?
I have a routine. I think, yeah, you need a routine or you go a little crazy. I exercise first thing, and that is the one thing that I think has kept me sane throughout this whole quarantine. If I didn't keep that, you would have lost me months ago, I think. But yeah, I will say the weekends, it does mesh together. And the biggest thing, the weekends, I think you have to make, at least I do, I have to make effort to not be on the computer, not like go straight to my computer. The biggest difference is there's no Zoom meetings, which, you know, is nice for work wise, but otherwise there's the other stuff that needs to be done. But I think just health wise, the first couple of weeks I didn't do that, and it really affected me. And I feel like, yeah, once I got down a routine, so if you're not doing a routine, you should do it. Like just the simplest things, right? Like you get up and you have coffee and you check up on things, or I have a coworker that now has a timer, like to speak to, as Trent was saying, it's very easy to just like work way too much too and not get up from your computer. And she set a timer up so it reminds her to get up and, like, it sounds silly, but like go for a walk around the block or something. And it like just doing that once a day, she said, made like a world of difference. And it was her routine. So if you guys don't have it, then yeah, I definitely recommend it.
And the other thing I would recommend, and this doesn't work for everybody, but for me, the one thing that I do is when, like, I get up in the morning and I'll go exercise. That'll be like my first thing. And like, I always do the same thing where I get up and I exercise and I come home and I make breakfast and then I start my day after that. Like, and then I'll shower and get going. But prior to the shower, I actually don't check my email because I've been reading a lot about how, and it's also like not checking it right before you go to bed, because our brains are really bad at processing unfinished loops. Like if there's something like hanging out there, our brains will keep thinking about it and keep kind of obsessing about it. And even if it's just like an email that's like, hey, like, especially if it's like a late night email from the night before, it's like, hey, no big deal. You don't have to look into this until tomorrow, but X, Y, and Z. Your brain doesn't see that part about not worrying about it until tomorrow. You will worry about it because you know about it. And so I've had to make like the conscious effort to like cut myself off from checking email or something and too early in the morning until I'm actually ready to deal with stuff. I guess that's the bigger one. Like I'm trying not to check email during time periods when I can't actually do anything about it if somebody asks me to do something. But
I think that's the one I'm worried about, is I'll get an email at 9 p.m. saying, hey, we need this for 9 a.m. And that's the one I'm worried about.
Yeah. Well, you've got you're doing some more client facing stuff. So yeah, I don't know if you can avoid that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I started in quarantine, do a meditation in lunchtime. Like just before lunchtime, I started doing a meditation. I just install a app on my phone, put the phone, going outside in the sun, and just do the meditation.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we got a few minutes left. It's 9:57 in the East Coast and something 57 wherever you guys are. Do you guys have any like questions for us before we break? Is there anything that you've been working on this week that you're questioning, or you want to get some that you're just curious about before we break for the night?
I have a question that I think would be good for everyone as well. Is when you guys are kind of like at a stopping, something's blocking, you have a problem that you are just like really struggling with. What's some of the things that you guys do to try and, you know, tackle that problem or like overcome it?
It's a great question. Jasmine, do you want to?
I was like in life or in computers? I was like, I got a question about that in life. Well, okay, with anything, what I do if I'm like stuck and I've been working on something and I just, banging my head, my first thing is to stop, honestly, to stop and to step back for a second. Maybe that means, just leaving the computer. If it's a computer thing, I will actively like leave the computer, maybe go get coffee or something just to clear my mind and step away, and then come back to it with a clearer mind. And I won't leave for too long. It's not like I go away for like a whole day or something, just like a couple, like 10, 15
Jasmine
minutes.
shuts down the second she gets the problem.
I know. I just say,
done.
forget it. It's
Bye.
done. And I throw the computer to the floor. But then, so what I do is, I mean, it's like design thinking in a way. You problem solve it, right? You look at it from different directions. So maybe the way that I was approaching it wasn't the best way. So I'll look back, and instead of trying to keep on approaching it that same way, I'll think like, okay, let's step back, and maybe I'm looking at the wrong problem. And I'll look at it again and maybe reframe it in a way like, oh, I thought I was like, I don't know if it was lighting. If like that, I thought it was that light that was doing it, and I was like kept on hammering it in. But actually, if I look back, it's really this. And it's about, and often for lighting, it happens when I'm trying to overcomplicate things, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. So I'll go back, and if sometimes I'll go back and like simplify it, and usually that will help solve the problem. But the whole key with anything, and I think this goes with life too, is you stop, you step back, you reflect, and you think about it from different perspectives, because the way you were thinking about it might not be the best way. And then when you step back, you would be like, oh, actually the real issue is actually this, not that. And I was actually just trying to solve the wrong problem. And I think that holds true for lighting too. So that's what I tend to do whenever I hit a problem.
It's a really good point. And I know with what we do in lighting, sometimes I ditto to everything Jasmine just said, but also I like evaluate the severity of the problem too, because lots of times I'll allow myself to really obsess over small problems that don't really like a good example that I give of this was working on some shots, working on a sequence where we needed more animated cars in the background moving along at night, like just cars driving along. And in my head, I was like, oh man, like where am I gonna get a car asset? And I gotta like make the lights go, and then I've got to do this, and I've got to, and I was like building up this problem in my head. And I mentioned it to somebody, and they're like, but that's like, what are you doing? Like, for there to be a car, all you need are lights moving, right? So go and nuke, draw two circles, make one white, make one red for the tail light, and just animate it like that. Do that a few times, and then that's it. And I did it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was, so sometimes it's analyzing what you actually need, especially visually, because you don't always need the thing to make it look like the thing, right? And that's always a thing that I always think back on too.
Yeah, and I mean, to speak to that, add in collaboration, because if you are stuck and you have a problem, one of the best things too is to get someone else's input, someone's fresh eyes into it, like that example. So yeah, that's actually a huge part of it too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, in a good, that's like crowdsourcing the problem. I was just talking to somebody about this. We just did that where this is totally not CG related, but the lease was due on the apartment that we're in, and we weren't sure how to, because like my landlord's kind of not the best at communicating, and we were like, well, we didn't want to be put in a position where like basically like, should we wait for him to let us know about like, is he going to raise the rent? Is he going to do this? And we asked friends about it. We asked like 10 of our friends, and they collaboratively like, well, I tried this. And then like literally they helped us piece together an email to send to him. And we did, and it was great. And now my rent is going to be $200 less than it was last year. Like it was like the best solution ever. So I'm usually stubborn in my ways, and I won't always ask for help, or I won't always crowdsource problems. But Jasmine's totally right. Like it does, because I always think I'm bothering people. But it does really help you speed up the problem solving process to kind of collaborate with trusted friends or colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, it does remind me of what I think we used to tell interns at Blue Sky was, you know, because we do want to teach artists to problem solve and, you know, problem solve on their own and be independent. Like, you don't want an artist every single moment there's a problem to like come up to you and be like, I can't do this. So there's like a fine line between that. But I think I remember saying to someone, it's like, if it takes you more than 30 minutes, it was either like 15 minutes or 30 minutes, come to me and ask me. Like, but I want you to actively try to problem solve it yourself before doing that. So I always think that's like a good rule of thumb. Like, if it's taking you more than like 30 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever, like, just ask someone, because chances are someone out there will know, and it will save you time.
And it's really good to communicate the stuff that you tried to solve, like your other, like, because it used to drive, when I was a render wrangler for a while, and it would drive me nuts when someone would say, like, someone just send me an email and be like, hey, this render's failing. And I was like, okay, can you give me a little bit more information? Like, what, you know, because it was so much better if it was like, hey, this render's failing. I tried turning off the fur, but that didn't help. I tried turning off all the shaders, that didn't help. I tried turning off all the lights, that didn't help. There's something broken in the geometry, but I really can't figure out what it is. Like, that does two things. A, it helps me narrow it down, and B, it makes it feel like you can empathize with their struggle for it when they were like, you're like, okay, I'm much more willing to help people when they feel like they're in the solution with me, as opposed to just like they found the first blockage point and then they just contact you, right? Yes. So I was especially that's really good when you're first starting out at a company too. I think like Jasmine said, if it's taking you longer than 30 minutes, there's probably a solution. But like, when you write the email, when you contact people, just make sure you very briefly but like succinctly mention the things that you've tried, so that they don't repeat that too. All right. Well, we are right up against, we're a little over time right now. Thank you guys very much for doing this again. I was saying I had quite the day with the kid today. And this was like my moment of Zen. This was my, like Clever, this was my meditation for the day. You guys, so.
I don't think I've heard one siren out the back of your window.
No,
so.
it's good. It's getting better out there. New York's getting better. So I haven't,
I was like,
I know. But Jasmine's like 30 blocks from me, so you'll hear it past hers, and then I know. And then if it's going to New Jersey, we'll hear it past you. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys very much for joining us. I really appreciate this, and I really hope to see you guys again next week. I'll send out my goal is with these is to send out a topic in the morning. And then so next week I will have a topic for us to discuss each one of these, because this one and last week, I really just wanted to test this format out and make sure that we like it. And I definitely do. And I hope you guys do too. So we'll do this again next week. All right. Be good, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.